Ayla. I will be sharing with you The Psychology on Elite Athletes of All Ages by Michaela Allen. All right, let's get this started. So, the first question is, what is an elite athlete? An elite athlete is basically someone who has exceptional abilities, who has made it far, obviously has great talent. They also have good psychological thinking, which means that even though they're put under a lot of pressure, they know how to get through it. They're hard workers, which is obviously how they got there in the first place. They had to start somewhere. They all started like us, trying to get to where we wanted to be. They have mental stability, which means that they're really stable. Like they know how to mentally prepare themselves. And they have good nutrition. So if you want to be a professional athlete or an elite athlete, you have to have good nutrition. You have to have good body control. You just gotta, be healthy. Okay, so who is an elite athlete? So these are just a little bit of an example of who some elite athletes are that most everyone knows. So basically, just professional athletes like Tom Brady, Mia Hamm, LeBron James, Derek Jeter, some Olympians such as Michael Phelps, Simone Biles, and Shaun White, who are all very successful. All right, so pre-game rituals. This is where we're going to start off. So, I got this from a website. It's basically just a free throw example, but can go towards any other sport. Everyone has a ritual. So I played soccer. I always said a little thing in my head before each game, and it doesn't really have a defined explanation, but it's believed to take control of the mind of an athlete. So it's very repetitive. Basically, they do a sequel of a certain behavior sequence. And so they can do something with their hands. They could say a prayer. They could look up to the sky. I've seen baseball players do the same where they look into their hat. They have something written into their hat, and that's what they do before each game. Very formal. And it could be spiritual. Some people have like God verses that they like to say. It increases their confidence, and it's both cognitive and behavioral factors. So it kind of gets in your mind, kind of calms you down before each game. It's also a placebo effect. So it helps them cure their fears of each game. It makes them think that if they do that they'll be fine. Most athletes, if they forget to do it, they mess up and they think that's why. But it's just like a placebo medication. It just helps you. And other things are influencers. So when you're a kid and you watch sports, you can see your favorite athlete do the same thing over and over and over again. And you think it's cool. So sometimes they take it from other people and make it into their own. All right. How do actual psychologists help an Olympic athlete? So, what can they do? Basically, psychologists do a lot of things that coaches can't. Like athletes have their families, their coaches, their doctors, etc. But the most critical person on an athletic team is the psychologist. And why are they employed along with all the other coaches is simple. It's because they have a very unique technique that they use with athletes that no one else really practices. So they kind of can get into the head of an athlete more so than a regular doctor, your family, and your coaches. So in this article, I read something from a guy named Matthew Cunliffe. He said, quote unquote, the top 6 inches of the body matter just as much the rest, which I agree with because the brain is very special. You only get one, and it's very hard to get in and out of it. So the psychologist can help you really well and just kind of getting into your head. And elite athletes go under a lot of pressure, not only because they're elite athletes, but it's also because They have people that they need to make proud of. They're on all television networks, and yeah, basically they just need that little extra push. So there's two different types of skills that psychologists can use to go with their athletes. There's mental skill and there's psychological skill. So the mental skill is basically just to control the mind. They use different techniques to see what's been bothering them or what they need to do to help them push through that moment. And then the psychological is using the issues and applying it to the sport. So say you're a boxer, they kind of talk you while you're boxing and see what pushes you harder and what makes you more angry than what doesn't. So that kind of helps them cope. So also what can help them, like coaches, like I said, can't get as deep as a sports psychologist, even if they're trained. So coaches do get training in that aspect, but they can't get trained enough as much as a psychologist because that's what they went to school for. So when athletes are making comebacks, it can be really tough on them because they come into shock of what they did wrong. So when you make a comeback, there's two types of comebacks. There's a comeback from an injury, and then there's a comeback from a life event. So when it's kind of like coping with a death, you're in denial, you have to make your way back up that hill. So in an injury, athletes have to come back after surgery, after therapy, both therapies, physical therapy and mental therapy, and they have to come back and push harder than what they did before. They kind of have to make their mark again, and that can take a toll. And then there's also life events, an unexpected pregnancy, unexpected death, unexpected divorce, that can all take a toll on an athlete's mind. And that's what they're trained for. They're trained to help you out in those times. And that's why they're very important to be on a staff. There's also being under pressure, like I said before, the media. It's really hard for them to be in the spotlight all the time, and sometimes even social media can hurt them if they read mean comments. Some people just aren't good with that type of like online bullying. They're also really good with helping visual aspects. So athletes are more hands-on. If there's a distraction in their routine, it can throw them off track. So therapists kind of use that, and when they're training them, they throw them off track on purpose to see how they cope with getting back on track. So they use props, and music is also a really good thing to help athletes focus and get their minds off of things that could have happened in the past or present or what's going on right now. So let's go to the next slide. So here's a question. Does being in the military count as an elite athlete? And yes, they do. Just because it's not technically a sport, they still put a huge toll on their body and do just as much work, but maybe even more than actual athletes. It can take a toll on them. They need psychological needs because they frequently move and jump around place to place all the time, and that takes a toll on their family, marriages, and all of that good stuff. Not really good stuff, but all of that stuff. So soldiers and athletes have this thing in their head where they have to win. And that can take a toll on their body because they're always told that second is first to lose. And if they lose, then they take it all out on themselves. They don't really take it out. If it's a team sport, they think it's their fault. And like I said before, the media is really tough, especially right now, especially for military people. So many things are going on right now, and for them to read certain comments and watch the news and like hearing false advertisement or fake news, parentheses, it takes a toll. So there are psychologists in the military, and they can go and sit down, and I actually read an article on this. A ex-military, he went and talked to the New York Mets. And he listened to how a psychologist talked to them and realized that he wasn't using the right techniques. And one day he went and talked to them personally, and they really liked him and the way he used positive reinforcement, and noticed how much athletes and military personnel have in common. So that's where this came about, and when I read about it, I thought I should put this in my presentation because I totally agree. I think that the military put a toll on their bodies as much as their brain, and there's a lot of mental health issues that can go along with it, just as much as an athlete. Like football, their head gets hit a lot. Just like military, they can fall, hit their head on rocks. They can get shot in their helmet. PTSD can take a toll on their brain. It's just a lot of common factors that you can kind of compare and contrast with a professional athlete. All right. So we talk about athletes and we always think about 23 to 28-year-olds, low 30s, but we also have youth athletes, especially in the Olympics. It's a huge thing. I feel like they get younger and younger every year. So I wanted to bring this into my topic. Youth athletes, they're very vulnerable. They tend to have higher levels of anxiety and mental disorders, mostly because of past experiences. A lot of athletes push themselves. Not every athlete comes from a wealthy, well-rounded family. A lot of athletes come from, troubled pasts, which pushes themselves to be better and want to prove themselves. They also have barriers. Kids don't like to talk. They don't like to ask for help. They lack education of mental health. So they kind of put up this wall and have these thoughts in their heads but never really speak about it because they think they're young. And these individuals typically are 16 to 23 years old. Normally, it happens because they are too scared to talk to someone. They don't want to get judged, so they kind of just hold it back. And then it all catches up with them and takes a toll on their brain. It shows that they're weak, and they don't like to hear that they're weak. So when they're on the field, they take it out on the field. They forget about it, but once they're off, it comes right back. So having awareness for youth is a huge deal, and having psychologists all around them helping them out is pretty self-explanatory. They just tend to not seek help. They're really into media. They're the generation that is full of technology. So they read the comments, they read everything, and online bullying, again, happens every day. And so that takes a huge toll on their mental health. And negative reinforcement and feedback goes all back to the coaches of their past, even their parents. Their parents could be really hard on them and want them to be absolutely perfect. And if they mess up once, they take it to heart and they think that it's their fault. All right, mental toughness throughout elite athletes. So what is mental toughness? Basically, mental toughness is the resilience and confidence to succeed in a sport. How do you get mental toughness? You seek help. And if you don't seek help, you won't be able to get it on your own. You do hand stuff first. You do the hard stuff first. So you don't want to do the easy stuff and push all the hard stuff aside, because one day you will get to the hard stuff and realize that you can't do it on your own. So a good way to set a goal is to start with the hard stuff and end with the easy stuff, and you'll feel a lot more accomplished. Be specific. You want to be specific in what you're doing. You don't want to just go into something and not knowing. You want to do your research. You want to be able to know what you're getting yourself into and deal with it. You want to deal with the challenges. You don't want to get hard on yourself. You want to be able to know that you are able to do it, and you want to put in your head that you're able to do it, and you want to be confident about it. And you want to guard your thoughts. So what that means is you want to be able to think about it, but then tell yourself you can do it. You don't want to think in your head and say, I'm dumb, I can't do this, I'm not good enough. To guard your thoughts, you want to be able to talk back to your thoughts and say, yes, you can. Stop thinking this way. So basically, mental toughness is a huge part in elite athletes and with their mental health. So this is along with the mental toughness. This is called the 4 C's: control, commitment, challenge, and confidence. And I'm going to kind of go through that picture and describe it with y'all for a second. So control is the first one I'm going to talk about. Control means you want to control your life. You want to control your thoughts and you want to get things done. You don't want bad thoughts about getting things done, but control thoughts being able to see good and bad. So you want to be able to see the good and the bad and be okay with it. Some people take bad things into consideration and take it really hard, but all you want to do is take the good stuff and the bad stuff and try and fix it. And then we're going to talk about commitment. Commitment means you can push through even when it gets hard. So it means that you commit to your goals. If you want to set a goal and you struggle with it at first, you got to commit to it and you got to finish it. You don't want to be a half doer. You don't want to finish things halfway and then just stop. So a lot of people have troubles with that because once they get halfway and it gets too hard, they just give up, and that can take a toll on your mental health. And a lot of elite athletes get to that point. They think that they peak, so then they give up, they retire, they go downhill, when we all know that they didn't peak and that they can go a little bit higher. You want to be able to willing to set a goal and push to achieve it. So the next one we're going to talk about is challenge. You want to challenge yourself. You want to willing to accept life challenges and be prepared for it. So when people challenge you, you want to be able to push through it. You want to be able to accept it, and you want to be able to know that you can be a better person. Say we're USA, we're in the Olympics, and we're about to play Germany, and Germany's stats are better than USA. That's your challenge. You want to have that challenge that you're going to beat Germany, even though that everyone knows that they have better stats than USA. And confidence. Confidence is a huge key in all of mental toughness. I think for me, this is the most important one. Your confidence can get shot down really easily by a coach, by a parent, by social media. You see one bad thing and that could shoot you down terribly. And I've gone through that experience personally. My soccer coach ruined the sport for me through my confidence when I knew I was a better player than what he made me out to be. The things he would say to me would kind of shoot me down, and it was nothing I've ever heard before, so I thought he was right until I had my teammates kind of pushing me up through it, but at that point he already ruined it for me, and I just stopped playing, which I regret. But confidence means that you don't want to give up. You don't want to believe what other people are saying. And you want to believe in yourself. So people will try and tell you things and say that you're going to fail. And they say, don't believe in yourself, like you can't do that. So then you start to believe in it, and then you do fail at it, which is what I did, or what other athletes do. They think that they peak, but people say that they peaked, so they listen to them and they start to believe it, so then they just quit. So you want to be able to control that, and that's where control comes into this as well. And confidence kind of has all three of those: control, commitment, and challenge kind of put into one. You want to be able to process your thoughts, and you want to take criticism the right way, and you want to be able to make sure that excuse me. You want to make sure that you can take it and you can put action to it and increase your ability. You don't want to stop your ability and quit. And that's basically the 4 C's of mental toughness and how it can relate to sports. If you take each one of those and put it to a sport, you'll be able to realize that they all make perfect sense. And then we go into my conclusion. So basically, mental awareness through psychology is very important. You want to be able to control, you want to be able to commit and challenge and have good confidence. Excuse me. And you also got to realize that athletes come in all different shapes, sizes, ages, races. People will get African Americans and Caucasians mixed up, and that can take a toll on some people, and their confidence can get shot down, especially with social media. Social media is a huge thing in this conversation just because it's today's society. Having control of your mind is key. Like I said before, you got to be able to talk to your mind in a different way than how you think. You have to be able to kind of talk back to it, and you want to be able to kind of have sticky notes in your brain saying, you can do it, you're good enough, and don't give up. And being prepared for any situation thrown their way should be handled professionally. And that's huge because professionals get there for a reason, and they should be able to handle their thoughts professionally, and with their resources that they're provided, they're very blessed to have. And that's my presentation, and here are my citations. All the citations that are on here are on each page that I used the website specifically for. So this citation down at the bottom is where I got this picture and my information from, and so on and so forth. And I hope you enjoy my presentation, and thank you very much.